on the Bout, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the strip. Today, we're going to be doing part 2 with Coach Mike Malecki, a man who's been part of this fencing sport for quite some time, 18-year veteran at the previous organization he was with, starting a new one now. Mike has some thoughts around training programs, bringing up squads, helping young athletes grow. Today, we're going to be exploring how to make fencing more popular as a sport. Mike, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm joined as always by my co-host, Lefty Zlotnick, the founder of Red Panda Fencing and the mind behind the Touch by Touch app. Lefty, good to see you.
Good to see you, Mark. Mike, good to have you back for part 2.
All right, so we're going to start off with question number 1. Mike, the question on my mind right now is you've started fencing programs. You've got a lot of experience in starting from zero and making successful programs out of it. What advice would you share for anyone thinking about starting up a fencing program? What should they know?
Number one, your main issues are going to be expense, the one that everybody worries about. The second and third is going to be understanding the liability of your coach. And number 3 is going to be working with your school to create your program. This is the biggest is working inside of a school district. Now, my experience has been with private school, and one of the things that private schools definitely have more of is you can get a little more quid pro. Hey, can I run this fencing program, this middle school fencing program in the spring? I'll take half, you take half. They're going to make sure that I get what I need because they also know that it's a quid pro quo in the fact that it's going to bring people to that school, which is going to up enrollment. With a public school, it's going to be a little bit different. You're going to have to deal with athletic directors who have specific budgets that they have to follow. There's going to be superintendents who may or may not like it because of political issues. What I mean by that is that some people will look at it as it's a violent sport, therefore we can't have it at school. Or it might be, what is the value to this school having that program there? That's the first question you should ask when you're there. And I'll give you a couple of answers that I use. Number 1, fencing is one of the safest sports. It's rated lower than badminton for injuries. And that astonishes people. Statistically proven, you're gonna have more damage to any football, soccer, baseball player compared to anybody. Somebody asked me what's the most common injury in fencing, and they think it's being stabbed through. No, it's MCL tears, ACL tears. It's not. It's normal sport wear and tear. That's one of my first things that I'll say to a school. The second thing that I'll bring up is that colleges, a school with fencing boosts its credibility, especially with the Ivies. This is one of the reasons why Tim Morehouse used fencing in the schools to try to get fencing into a lot of inner city schools, because it would allow for kids to get a little bit of a better bump. And another school that's inner city that has a poorer reputation, by having that fencing program, it does up them in the eyes of other higher level schools. I will say that every single kid that I have that fences, whenever they had a college interview, the first thing out of the mouth of the interviewer after they get through the pleasantries is, "So I see you're a fencer." It is a fantastic thing to bring up to people. It will up you in the eyes of the Ivies. It'll up you in the eyes of the colleges. And finally, the last thing that I point out is that most of the kids that we're taking are not going to be athletes from other sports. We're not picking kids from other sports. We're getting kids from the theater department. We're getting kids from student government. We're getting kids from a lot of different other sectors who may never have done a sport before, or may have done sports and are 2 seasoned athletes, and they're looking for a winter thing. I know my one saber going to Drew this year, she never considered herself to be an athlete. Never. And now I'm a fencer. And it gave her such strength and courage. She never really spoke to anybody. She had her friends, of course. She never really was like that kind of person, and she is probably one of my best leaders that I've ever had. I actually had her parents come up to me at the end of the year and say, "Thank you. She is so different from the beginning of the year."
Mike, one of the thoughts I'd like to hear you share, why fencing isn't as popular as it could be, what could be done at the club levels, et cetera. Could you talk a bit about what would make fencing more popular in your opinion?
There's 2 things. Number 1 is the barrier of understanding the weapons and understanding the sport. It is not as easy as for football. Hey, he crosses that line, he gets 6 points, and if they kick a field goal, it's 7. Pretty simple to understand. What a intentional head mask pull is or the offsides rule or whatever is there. We don't need that. We can watch a football game and understand it. However, when you're watching épée, it's different because which is what you get. But when you're looking at foil and saber and you're watching and you're looking at the person, it's subjective. If you are a fan, you're looking at saber and you're going, oh, it had to be my kid. The problem with that is they don't understand the right of way and they don't understand those rules. That's a problem. And it's something that holds us back a little bit. At least in foil and saber, unfortunately, it leads to the fact that people can't understand when the person has right of way. It's not simple. Now, that's a problem in and of itself, and that's something that I can't fix. And that's something that even USA Fencing, if we want to keep the sport, a lot of the individuals who are very knowledgeable are also outdated in their thought process. Some computer programs out there that are like touch by touches elevating us onto the 21st century. I've still seen people with some scoring machines from 1985 because they like them. The problem is that it's not for the exact same problems. And unfortunately, we see a drop off as soon as high school finishes, or unless you're going into the elite levels, those people are not fencing for the rest of their lives. And lifelong fencing is probably a kind of a mid-range there too, is that I think a lot of our clubs don't encourage lifelong fencing.
I was going to say, fencing is literally the sport you can do for the rest of your life. I've reffed a 90-year-old person that could kick my butt. So you can literally do it for your entire life. Mark, as a spectator yourself, would you be more inclined to listen to a video tutorial about learning right away from a very seasoned veteran or your kid, someone your kid's age that's in the sport competing right now?
Great point, Lefty. Yeah, people want to be able to connect with the young folks who are doing it, especially if I'm tied to the sport through my child, which I am. I want to know it from their perspective.
I've had talks with a couple coaches, specifically in regards to TBT, about getting more student athletes involved. This is a discussion that I need to take to them, where I'm saying maybe they need to be the ones that are creating how-to or spectator tutorials.
One of the best things I did was I relinquished my team's Instagram page to my managers and my students. I always approve everything that goes out, TikTok trends and things of that nature. One of my favorite things is there's fencing TikTok, but it's not very out there because there's not a lot of people on it. We don't have that in fencing and we need it because even though we're small, we need that. I think the best person we've got is Cyrus of Chaos. He is one of the best for explaining all the problems in fencing, all the good things in fencing as well. And he's a fantastic resource. We need more like him. And that's the problem is we need kids out there hyping it up as well. Brings me into the high school issue. I think personally that if we want United States fencing to grow, it needs to start in the high schools. It cannot be started in clubs. And I'll give you 3 reasons why. Number one, there's not enough coaches. And the problem is, if I go to my new school, can they say, hey, Mike, can you be an assistant lacrosse coach? Yeah, they can do that. I just need to go for a little bit of training through the state and bam, I'm a lacrosse coach. And then I learn from the more experienced coach what's going on. And then I become a head coach. Currently, British fencing was doing this for the last 7-8 years where they're trying to bring things into the community. They have programs. They actually have training programs to bring a fencing program to their school. And that's something that I've been working with the United States Fencing Coaches Association for, and New Jersey has picked it up as a certification process. And JSIAA, the governing board of the schools, is now giving free lessons to anybody who wants to be a fencing coach so that we can get more fencing coaches in. That's something that clubs don't have because their main issue is profit motive. They want the kids at the clubs. They want the kids there for as much as they can so that they can run their business. That's 100% fair. But you're not going to grow the sport when you have one top club in the area who's taking everybody, and then you try to get another club in and it becomes competition. If the clubs supported the high schools 100%, they would get more kids in as they saw it. In fact, 4 of the clubs that my kids go to have seen increased membership because of my team.
A parent actually ran the stats. If you had one club fencer on your team, you increased your team overall. Your placement would be so much better. And so as high school coaches, we started to encourage our students to go to club and become those club fencers to improve in the off season. And when they came back, they'd be more seasoned, more honed in, and better skilled. But then to your point, there's not enough coaches. So I love the fact that you've worked with USA Fencing and other governing bodies to get this curriculum in where now in New Jersey, people have the ability to learn to be a fencing coach, take up spots that are needed.
Michael Griffith of the NJIFA, the State Coaches Association, he's the president. He and I have been working on this for a while. And one of the reasons why we're really passionate about this, I know when I was starting out as a coach, the resources to become a coach for fencing, there was not enough to get me fast enough in. And one of the worst things was nobody taught me how to run a program. Nobody taught me things like budgeting. I had to come through on my own, and it was tough. In fact, if you talk to the bookkeeper at Moore's Catholic, she'll tell you that I'm one of the most cost-conscious coaches. I always knew what my budget was. I always knew how much money I had in my bank. I always knew what was going on. I learned because there were years where the administration would turn around and go, "Oh, yeah, you don't have that money anymore because we needed to pay for extra transportation this year, or we needed this and we needed that." I came up with ideas like my fundraising funds. I found ways of making sure that we had enough for everything that helped fund my program. Like the money that we charged helped to fund the program and keep our program going. In addition, you were asking about how to build a program. The last time I heard it was 25 grand to start a program. Now, there's three ways you look at building a program financially. The first is how much is it going to cost the school to hire you as coaches? You need to have that in your budget. If you don't, that's going to be the first question they ask. You also have to understand transportation, which that's one of the first things I did was when I started making sure I was a varsity coach, I started asking the question, how much do the buses cost per trip? Budgeting is probably one of the biggest things that they've got to do because you have to have enough equipment for the kids. And you have to have a little bit of money to make sure that if a kid's not buying his own equipment, Moore's Catholic used to have the kids, we had about maybe 5 or 6 starter sets at the start when we were a club. And then we started to increase as we went, getting our stuff, making sure that we built up a closet. But I will say that it's expensive out at the front, and that can be a barrier to the kids. So you always want to make sure you have a little bit of money left over that if a kid can't afford defense, that you can get them defense and they can borrow equipment. You can cut costs at all times. The coaching fees are going to be the same. The transportation is going to be, that's all the AD's issue. That's going to be your athletic director's issue. The thing that you really need to focus on is how can I get the kids to practice? How can I get the kids to have equipment? What can we do to make sure, what is it going to take to do that? And then remember one great rule, you don't have to buy it all at once. It can be bought over time. Also, too, some of the local districts, like I know the New Jersey district for USFA, will supply a brand new high school team with a set of reels and a scoring machine for free. That's a resource right there. I never knew that resource when I was coming in. These are the kinds of things that, you have to make sure that you have, and you don't need metal strips right away. We have people who are still fencing, taping down the strips on the floor. It's okay to start that way. I think one of the other problems that we have is you got to have 9 members for a team. And everybody's so focused on that 9-member. We first started at Moore's Catholic, we had 10 kids, and every kid learned 2 weapons. Because if one person was sick, somebody had to switch. And so it was a fun time during those wild days. We never won anything, but it was fun because you'd have a kid be like, "Oh, you're saber? Oh yeah, you're foil tonight because I need a foil." So it was a lot of fun to do that, and those early days are going to be tough, but they're going to be fun too because you're going to learn all the problems that are going to occur. You're going to forget that the Santelli Citrullo fees are this amount and you don't have enough money for it right now. And that's when you have to find a creative way to get that money so those kids can participate, even if it's taking a deficit in your budget the next year.
To help those newer coaches, New Jersey has that certification program. But talking about different resources, you touched upon the resource where they can get a free scoring setup. What other resources would you point them in? I can only speak from our experience, but I would say that the majority, at least in Morris County, of coaches are very helpful to each other. The local coaches of high schools around the area that you are trying to build this program would be a great place to work with. But what other resources, what other contacts do you think these up and coming coaches should be in tune with?
My first step would be stop at the United States Fencing Coaches Association and look for the high school certification. That program pretty much it touches on everything, and basically it consists of a 2-hour worksheet / PowerPoint that you have to go through. And what I mean by 2 hours is it would take about 2 hours to fill out the worksheets. And it's more along the lines of what's your coaching philosophy, what's your best way of talking to an AD. It's an all-encompassing thing for that first person to feel not completely out in the woods alone. That's where that curriculum came from, trying to answer the questions that are most important right away. And then there's usually a 6-hour clinic which goes over stretching, goes over games to play with the kids to understand things, goes over basics of how to teach Perry 6 and 3, 4, 5, and all of the basics there. So you can feel a little comfortable with some drills, some stuff. And you can't just stop there ever. And that's why the USFCA is such a great program, and the fact that they're now working with the NCDP, the Coaching Development Program, which I think is a fantastic route, because one of the things that a lot of complaints come in about is the fact that they're trying to standardize education. But if you look at martial arts schools, every single martial arts school teaches you the same thing over and over again. It's basics, it's forms, and it goes in a progression. And it's usually via belts. Now, United States fencing, we have Italian coaches, Hungarian coaches, ex-Soviet coaches, American coaches. Everybody's got their own different thing, but being able to have the same lexicon, the same idea, the same thought process, and being able to be trained in that way, it's going to help those new coaches understand things. And Doc Rolando was a fantastic fencing coach. He actually sat me down one day. He said, I just need to tell you something. He goes, you're a 67 Camaro and you're racing in Formula One. Who's going to win?
That's Doc.
and I will say his comment there was not dismissive of my experience. It was showing me what needed to be said. They can still be coaches. They can still come in. Can they teach basic fencing skills? Yes. We have to stop getting in a way of allowing these people. Now, we have to tell them, you are a 67 Camaro to a Formula One race car, and that needs to change, and this is how we have to fix it. That's how you can grow a program. If you have no coach whatsoever, look to your local SCA group, look to your local HEMA group, look to your local classical fencing group, and say, hey, is there anybody that could use a job, that could use a little bit of extra part-time cash? Come out and work with us, and we'll teach you how to be an Olympic-style fencing coach. We will teach you that. But we also want your expertise as well. I personally think the high school path is our best way. Let's put it this way. The New Jersey Athletic Conference that we're a part of, all of my fencers fenced 27 bouts in just those 9 matches. Right there, 27 bouts. Then they went to Santelli Citrullo, where they fenced 6 to 8. Then they went to states where they fenced 6 to 8. They went to counties where they fenced 6 to 8. If they went to states, they fenced 6 to 8. See how the numbers are logging up on this? And they're getting a lot of exposure, a lot of intense competition as well. A club fencer may only get 5, 6, 7 tournaments a year, major tournaments. And how long do they fence for? A pool, and then a DE, and then depending on how far the DE they get into. This is a great crash course of getting people into a very rigorous program. And as I said, here's the thing. High schools are where people get their exposure to sports a lot. You go to your first high school football game as a kid. You go to your brother's soccer game. You go to your sister's softball game. You watch and you cheer, and you're there for those people. You're there to support them. And sometimes there's people that are just from the town who are coming in to watch. Hey, Morris Hills, I'm like 57 years old, and Morris Hills basketball is going to the championships. I want to go and see. That kind of exposure, that kind of thought process is what keeps those sports going. And while a lot of the sports are starting to go into those club angles and those pro angles, they also know that if the kid is not getting a varsity letter from the high school, how are they going to go through? And while people will argue that my kids won't make it to college with just high school experience, I've put a bunch of unrated kids through college because they are coachable and trainable.
Excellent food for thought there, Mike. One area I'd like to hear both of you guys talk about is you both coach in New Jersey. Mike, you're at the high school level. Lefty, you're at the collegiate level. What are some of the challenges about New Jersey? Put that in context, if you will, for us, for the folks who don't know.
With clubs being open year round. And part of that is because the fencing season is almost a full year at the national level, where high school is what, like 3 months roughly?
You're looking from Thanksgiving to March 1st.
Yeah. So
that's about 3-4 months.
So it's a small chunk of the year. You've got these fencers that are at the high school level that we're encouraging to go to club to get better. And the club has an expectation. You're competing. You are competing under our name. You're fencing for us. And so when they compete, they're competing with their club's patch or their club's name next to them. It's honor. It's a good thing. And then they get to the high school. Now they've got to fence at the high school level for their high school team. They're representing another organization. And unfortunately, a lot of the competitions that they would be doing for their club coincide with competitions that are required for their high school team. So there's a lot of overlap of season that tends to conflict. So that's a challenge right there of who do I fence for? When do I fence for them?
We've gotten better with that. I know that the State Coaches Association now for the high school level is starting to look at like when Junior Olympics is so that we don't have competitions on that day. And that's in partnership with the NJSIAA. We're trying to make sure that the NJSIAA tries to keep it. One of the big things was fencing over Christmas time. Martin Luther King weekend is usually a big tournament weekend. I was like, you have us fencing Morris Hills again on Martin Luther King Day. Stop. Because we don't fence on that day because it's not just a holiday for the kids and a break in a very intense season, but it's also the fact that there are kids going to tournaments that weekend and we don't want to have to push things back.
That time of the season for high school, that's like the heart. That's where you're getting close to postseason determinations. And now you're getting these kids worried about two things. I can't be in two places at once. I need to compete for my club because it's an important qualification for me to get to summer nationals. But I've also got to compete for my high school because we're trying to make it to the state championship. Like, you're putting a lot of pressure on these student athletes.
I think that needs to be a little bit better with U.S. fencing in the high schools, but also too, I'll point out for U.S. fencing's perspective, who cares about 60 high schools? And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying there's 60 high schools that have this sport, maybe a couple in New York, a couple in Connecticut, 16 in Georgia, a couple in LA. There's not enough of an American presence to really focus on trying to adjust the entirety of U.S. fencing to these high school groups. But the problem is, if you don't do that, then we're still going to keep having these clashes. The best thing that U.S. fencing could do is support the high school fencing programs.
We're not just talking about New Jersey building programs. Every state should be trying to build high school programs within their schools, and having the resources available would be great. There's a little bit of, as a college coach, yeah, I want that high-level athlete. I want the guy or the female fencer that can compete at any level and has the highest rating. Of course I want that person. But I also need a person who understands the team atmosphere, because college fencing is very team-oriented, squad-oriented. I want the balance. I want a kid who's got great talent, great rating, high-level competitor, but also understands the team aspect. So if USA Fencing could work a little bit with a New Jersey model and that coach's certification, Mike, that you were talking about before, and really get it across the country to start building some programs, eventually, yeah, like you said before, the initial cost setup can be high, But in the long run, that's what you got to look at. You got to look at the long run. And that's where the true benefit is. You're getting more student athletes. And now you're increasing college recruitment possibilities, college opportunities for these kids. Mike, you said it earlier, the types of students that fencing in high school brings to the table. You're getting those artists, you're getting those theater people, you're getting the people who think strategically and very differently, those chess players, those people who may not play a sport their entire life and then go, hey, this connects with me because I think this way. And I feel like we really need to push building these programs across the nation and not just in New Jersey.
Yeah, and the NJSIAA actually really is looking at, like, one of the things that the New Jersey Interscholastic Sports Association really tries to push is the fact that it's about the team, it's about the school pride, it's about the work ethic. The problem that we get with a lot of the kids who go to individual, and this happens in swimming, it happens in tennis, it happens in a lot of different stuff, the more advanced they are, the more we get this comment that comes about a lot. What happens if my kid can't make it because he has an international tournament? Then he doesn't make it and he doesn't get his varsity letter. You can't be two places at once. We used to fence Chase Emmer. He was a Morristown fencer. And Chase was fantastic. I loved this kid. He very humble, very straightforward. But my A strip went 15 seconds with him before he lost. My kid came off. I'm standing there with his USFA profile sitting right there going, do you really think you could have beaten him? And the thing was, Chase should have been the top fencer in New Jersey that year. But he was going to the Olympics. He was doing Olympic trials. He was doing all these great things. He understood that you can't be the top of everything just because if you're not there, you can't be the top. And really, to tell you the truth, what's more important? I think it's him trying to get to the Olympics, personally. He still represented his school, and he did it honorably, and he did it efficiently, and when he couldn't be there, he couldn't be there. But he never argued with the coach. Never, like, I spoke with the coach about it multiple times, and there was never any real friction in that because he knew he wasn't expecting, I should have been top fencer in New Jersey. He doesn't expect that. He understands it. They're like, if we have the best fencers, and I'm like, if you have the best fencers, say, for example, I'm building a team and I've got 3 great fencers who never show up to practice. The problem is my kids never get to fence the quality fencer that person is. Second, the kids themselves start, like the kids who are working hard at every single practice, hoping for a spot, and then all of a sudden this person never shows up to practice and they're there fencing. That's going to lead to a little bit of resentment, and they're going to quit the team. And then what happens to your team? You got 3 fencers left, and that's it. The team is leaving because they don't feel like they get anything out of it. They acknowledge the fact that they're better than them. They understand that. But at the same time, when a person never shows up, that's one of the problems with, and this is where some of the club coaches need to be a little bit more understanding in the situation of, if the kids have a high school fencing practice, they're going to bring more kids to your club. Club allows the kids to participate in the fencing team. If I know that my kids are going to a specific club and it's a fantastic club, and they give leeway during the high school season, you're going to see more high school fencers go to that club.
Both of you gentlemen brought a lot of good thoughts around how they can potentially grow the sport. Before we wrap up, I'd love to get final thoughts on some of the things from each of you about what should the sport be thinking about going forward? Because in the end, we all want to grow the sport. So, Lefty, we'll start with you. What are some of your parting thoughts on how the sport can help itself?
I think we need to find the group of people to start putting together educational video. I really think that's going to be important, especially for our spectators. But I think that will help grow the sport because the spectators don't just include the parents. It includes athletic directors, the administrators who know nothing about the sport because it's not your typical sport. Giving them an opportunity to learn more about fencing and understand it. So when they do come the meets and to the events, they go, hey, I recognize that's what they just did. Giving them a little bit of that power of being like, yeah, I know what's going on, rather than them just standing there going, I don't get it. It gives them a little bit more ownership of this is their program. They're the athletic director.
When you're pitching your school, having an educational video like that to show at the Board of Ed meeting and the stuff that you need to get through, having them understand that is a important and essential fact. And also, too, as you said, the person sitting there cheering, yay, I don't know what just happened. I actually had our nationally ranked basketball team show up to support us. And I was sitting there explaining to the basketball team what the sport was about. And then they started becoming our biggest cheers.
I know us at Drew, we're trying to build more of that too, that relationship with other teams and that bond. That already happened there. That's what you need, because now you're gaining support of everyone, getting that equal opportunity to watch and support the school as a whole.
Yeah, you make a great point about it's how you build the ecosystem.
Yes.
I want to say thank you to you, Mike, for bringing your thoughts. Another thought you want to share?
I did have a couple of parting thoughts. Just the three things that I think really need to do. Number one, we really need to support high school fencing. We need to start spreading it throughout the country. And one of the reasons being is just the fact that, as we said, one of the things I always had a problem with was when trying to explain to people what happened. And it's, oh yeah, this person placed 26th at Summer Nationals. That's great, but it's 26th place. They don't realize how important that is. But when you have a match between Morris Hills and you get on the school announcements the next morning and say, Morris Catholic Pope John just beat Morris Hills 14-13 yesterday, leading their record to an 8-0 season so far, that is what brings attention to the sport from the school. And that kind of thing needs to be put in place, because the assistants of high school, think about it. What are the most important sports right now? Basketball, football, baseball, softball. Why? Because those are the sports you grew up learning about. You grew up seeing, you grew up explaining. This is probably the most important thing. The second thing I want to point out is building a program is not as hard as you think it is. It can start with one individual with a $2,000 budget, but you have to have the drive to learn, and you have to have the drive to want to build the program. It's not something that's going to work with just 1 year and boom, surprise. It's got to be built from somebody who's passionate and well-meaning, and then bring in those people, those SCA people, those HEMA people, those educators who want to get a coaching certification so that they can up their price point. I think we should also be going to colleges and saying, hey, education departments, we're willing to give you a fencing training program for your college, for educators, so that they can start these programs. Now, we're talking about doing that in New Jersey, but it would be great if throughout the country we could do that kind of thing and get all these kids, all these people who are being educated to be educators, to come in and say, do you have experience coaching anything? Yeah, I can coach fencing. Well, what does a fencing program entail? And then they start talking. And that can open us up a little bit.
Mike, thank you for bringing your insights and your guidance on what we should be thinking about. Lefty, you as well. I think that both of you guys share a philosophy here, and fencing as a whole, as much as it's evolved over the last few years, has a little bit ways to go in terms of elevating the sport at the high school level. I think you guys have brought some really good food for thought, and a lot of folks will get a lot out of this. So thank you both. For those who want to learn more about TBT, tbtfencing.com, you can go over there and learn a bit. If you want to learn more about Mike, you'll have it in the show notes. Please feel free to like and subscribe. I want to thank you, Lefty, as always, for co-hosting this.
This is always a great thing. I love it. Thanks, Mark. Thank you, Mike.
This has been Beyond the Bout. I want to thank you, Mike, for joining us.
I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
And we'll speak with you guys next time. Take care, everybody.